The day they bulldozed my dream home. The scent of fresh pine and new paint was supposed to greet me that morning. My house me dream was finally ready. I'd spent years saving, planning, imagining my kids' laughter echoing off the walls, maybe even grandkids someday. But when I pulled up to my lot at dawn, there was no house. Just a jagged crater of mud and splintered beams, with a single chunk of drywall bearing my dog's paw print, like a cruel signature on a death certificate. I stood there, keys dangling in my hand, as the sunrise mocked me. This wasn't just a house. It was my future, and someone had erased it overnight. My name's Tom Grayson, a 52-year-old widower who thought he'd found the perfect spot in Willow Creek, a quiet patch just outside the manicured grip of Pineview Estates HOA. Their neighborhood screamed conformity beige siding, identical mailboxes, lawns mowed to military precision. My lot. It was adjacent but independent, free from their clipboard tyranny. I liked it that way. The construction went smoothly. Permits approved, inspections passed, no shortcuts. My contractor, Dave, was a straight shooter. We finished 2 weeks early, and I'd planned a small barbecue to christen the deck. Then the letter arrived. It was 5 days before move-in, printed on flimsy letterhead with a tacky seal. Pineview Estates HOA claimed my unsafe, derelict structure violated their community standards under some obscure clause. Derelict? The place still smelled like varnish. I wasn't even part of their HOA. I laughed, then fired off an email with my deed, survey, and permits. I called the number listed straight to voicemail for one Deborah Walsh, Community Standards Director. I left a message, calm but firm, thinking that'd be the end of it. The next day, I spotted her. Deborah Walsh, mid-50s, in a peach blazer and heels sinking into my dirt driveway, barking orders at a guy in a hard hat next to a bulldozer. I stormed over. "What's this?" I demanded. She flashed a smile that could curdle milk. "Mr. Grayson, we're addressing this eyesore. Safety concerns." I stepped in front of the machine. "This is my land. You've got no authority here." She waved a clipboard. "Our records say otherwise." I thrust my folder of documents at her. Permits, all of it. The bulldozer guy hesitated. I started filming. Deborah's smile tightened, and she muttered about non-compliance before stalking off. I called Dave, my lawyer, and the cops. The dispatcher yawned through her response. "Civil matter. File a report if there's damage." Damage came that night. At 6:30 a.m., I pulled up to my lot and nearly crashed. My house was gone, reduced to wet rubble, shattered glass, and insulation smeared like blood across the grass. A sign stabbed into the mess read, "Unsafe structure removed, Pineview Estates HOA." My porch light flickered in the mud, a dying pulse. I screamed until my throat burned, startling the birds. I gathered fragment splinters, a crushed light fixture like a detective at a murder scene. The cop who showed up, 3 calls later, squinted at my permits with zero enthusiasm. "HOA says this was an abandoned shack," he said, holding up doctored photos time-stamped a month ago. "They claim you're squatting." I nearly laughed. Squatting? I built this from the ground up. But the seed was planted. I wasn't just a homeowner. I was a liar in their story. My lawyer, Susan Carter, was a firebrand. She dove into Deborah's packet, obtained through a rogue HOA board member. "They're dirty," she said. A city land use map, dated 3 months ago, falsely showed my lot as part of Pineview Estates. My title report had no HOA encumbrance. Susan and I hit the county records office, where a clerk named Greg Larson flashed a too smooth smile. He pulled up my parcel, now highlighted as Pineview Extension. Susan pressed him. "Who authorized this post-closing change?" Greg mumbled about proprietary reviews and vanished to check something. He didn't come back. Public records later revealed forged signatures and a backdated map, with a footer referencing a non-existent Pineview Phase 3. It was a scam. I set up trail cams around my lot. Susan warned they'd be back. 2 nights later, a black SUV crept up at midnight. The driver, hoodie up, poked around with a flashlight. I recognized the car Greg's. Then came the fence. A chain-link monstrosity encircled my land, padlocked, with signs screaming, "No trespassing, community enforcement." 2 goons in vests smirked from a sedan. "You're trespassing," one called. "I own this." I shot back. They waved a clipboard like a holy relic. The sheriff's deputy, barely old enough to shave, shrugged. "Civil issue." I was drowning in their game. The HOA piled on. $50 daily fines for land misuse, a smear campaign on local news calling me a drugged-in squatter, and a $45,000 invoice for community damages. Deborah gave a teary interview about public safety. Then someone shoved a USB under my door with a note. "You didn't hear this from me." It held gas station footage showing my house's construction, frame by frame, debunking their shack lie. Susan grinned. "This is gold." But they weren't done. My truck's windshield was smashed, and fraud was keyed into the hood. Greg's SUV was spotted nearby. HOA flyers with my DMV photo flooded my complex, branding me a dangerous squatter. The breaking point was their disciplinary hearing. I wasn't a member, but I went. Deborah, flanked by board members, slid me a $45,000 damages breakdown, environmental, property value, emotional distress. She purred, "We can place a lien if you can't pay." I stood, folded their invoice, and said, "See you in court." Her eyes flickered. She hadn't expected a fight. Susan filed a $400,000 lawsuit against Deborah, Greg, the HOA, their contractor, and unnamed accomplices. We alleged fraud, trespass, vandalism, and unlawful demolition. Channel 8 asked for my side. I showed the gas station footage, permits, everything. The tide turned until a reporter, Mike Hensley, met me off record. "Evergreen Realty, tied to Pineview, wants your lot for a development," he said. "They'll pay above market to make this go away." It clicked. My house wasn't a mistake. It was an obstacle. Susan unearthed an email from Deborah to Greg. "Lot 42C must vanish." Dave found a GoPro with time-lapse footage of the entire build. A former HOA member testified they'd fabricated the shack story to justify demolition. In court, the jury watched my house rise on screen, my initials in the garage. Susan exposed the fake map, Greg's forged records, and Deborah's evergreen bonus. Greg cracked, admitting he knew my house was new. Deborah's community savior act crumbled when her profit motive surfaced. The jury took 3 hours. Verdict: guilty on all counts. Damages: $400,000. Deborah faced criminal charges. Greg cut a deal. The HOA dissolved, its assets liquidated. The judge's words rang. "This is a warning to HOAs who think they're untouchable." A year later, I stood on my new deck, flipping burgers. The house was smaller, no HOA in sight. I sold the old lot to a nature trust, now a bird sanctuary, a jab Deborah would loathe. Susan and I started HomeSafe, a nonprofit helping HOA victims. Letters poured in from people who'd fought back because I did. At the barbecue, my neighbor Joe raised his beer. To no fences. I clinked his bottle. And no Deborah's. Laughter filled the yard, kids ran, and the sunset felt like home. What do you think? Have you faced injustice or abuse of power? Share your story in the comments. Should you fight back or walk away? Let's debate. It's your voice matters.